Good afternoon, and you're very welcome to Scale Ireland's special webinar with the Minister for Finance, Paschal Donohoe, who is also, of course, President of the Eurogroup, and he's joined us today from County Meath. My name is Martina Fitzgerald, and I'm the CEO of Scale Ireland, which represents, supports and advocates on behalf of our Indigenous Tech Startup sector. And there are currently 2,000 tech startup and scale-ups all around the country, employing 47,000 people. And for every one job created by this sector, 5 more are created in the wider economy. And we have seen throughout the COVID crisis that this is a very resilient sector. There are now 4 Irish tech companies that have unicorn status. That means they are valued at more than $1 billion. And they, of course, are Intercom, Workhuman, and also Ergo and Let's Get Checked. And interestingly, the last 2 gained that status during the pandemic. There was also a further strong endorsement of this sector recently with the recent ranking of Dublin as one of Europe's leading tech cities. And Dublin was described as a thriving hotspot in the startup space. And I think that's all very positive news, but there's lots and lots more potential in terms of employment, in terms of experts, in term exports, in terms of growth, and also innovation. Now, I've been CEO of Scale Ireland for almost a year. And during that period, I've had lots of discussions, and a lot has been spoken about the changing landscape for foreign direct investment. It is a very, very important issue, as the Minister knows well, but equally important for Ireland's future economic prosperity is the contribution that the Indigenous tech community and startup sector can bring to bear. And that's what Scale Ireland is working to achieve. Now, there's also considerable EU support for this sector. We've seen separate initiatives from President Macron and also the European Commission, who have both launched separate initiatives outlining the best policies, the best conditions for startups to thrive and for this sector to reach its full potential. And I'm delighted that Ireland is a signatory to the European Commission's initiative, which is called the Startup Nation Standards. And it highlights key issues such as attractive share option schemes, fast track visas, measures to incentivize private investment in startups, and also measures to tackle red tape. And in my day job, I speak to founders constantly, and this EU initiative works for them. But we all know what is very important: implementation and delivery, and we need to see both. And I can be assured that throughout today's discussion, we're going to hear plenty of that with the Minister. Now, in terms of today's format, I'm shortly going to hand over to the Chair of Scale Ireland, Brian Caulfield, whom you'll all know very well. And he's going to discuss some of the sectoral solutions that we and our partners in the Alliance for an Innovation-Driven Recovery have put forward, and which comprises, of course, of the Irish Venture Capital Association, HBAN, which is the group of angel investors, and of course, Euronext and Tech Ireland. We're then going to hear from the Minister, Paschal Donohoe, who's going to give a keynote address, and then we're going to have 2 panel discussions, firstly with a group of representatives from 3 startups of various sizes, and also from 2 leading investors. And we're delighted this morning to be joined by Eileen, who is the go-to-market lead for EMEA for Stripe, which of course was founded by 2 Irish brothers, John and Patrick Collison, in 2010, and now is valued at $95 billion, making it one of the most valuable privately owned companies in the world. We're also delighted to be joined remotely by John Purdy, who is the founder and non-executive chairman of Ergo, having up till recently been the CEO for the past 28 years. And Ergo has grown to become a €100 million business with nearly 500 employees and 2 spin-offs, Flowforma and of course Ergo, which we mentioned previously. And I'd also like to welcome here in studio Sohini, the founder of Empeal, which is an early stage award-winning digital health startup providing data-driven, clinician-led solutions in relation to health and well-being in a gamified way. And congratulations to Sohini, because Empeal recently won the 250,000 top prize from Tangent, which of course is Trinity's Ideas Workplace. We're also delighted to be joined this morning by two leading investors, and they're both in studio with us today. Elaine Coughlan, who is a co-founder and managing partner of Atlantic Bridge, and that is a global technology fund with more than 1.2 billion euro of assets under management, and also investments in 80 tech companies in Europe, Asia, and also America. And Elaine has, if you don't mind me saying, 30 years experience in the technology industry as a founder, as an executive, and also as a board member and also as an investor. And finally, we're joined by Alan Merriman here in studio. And he's a founder and also the executive chairman of Elkstone. And Alan oversees all of the group's activities, including family office, investment services, importantly, ventures, and the real estate opportunities. And Alan has been, or is currently on, a number of Elkstone's portfolio companies, including Let's Get Checked, which we heard about earlier, Flipdish, Health Beacon, and Soapbox Labs. And we're delighted that the Minister is going to stay and join us for those discussions with our special guests. Now, of course, we do want to thank our hosts, Dogpatch Labs, and also Patrick Walsh for hosting us here this morning and for their continued support. And finally, the hashtag for today's event is hashtag Scale Ireland Startups. And finally now, I am going to hand over to the chair and co-founder of Scale Ireland, Brian Caulfield, who many of you will know very well. And Brian has been a very effective and leading advocate for the sector for almost 3 decades. Brian.
Thank you, Martina. Firstly, I'm delighted to see such momentum behind the Indigenous technology sector and also behind Scale Ireland. In 2019, myself, Liz McCarthy, and Patrick Walsh of Dogpatch Labs came together and founded Scale Ireland because we wanted to ensure that Irish startup and scale-up technology companies had a strong voice and were being promoted and supported to reach their full potential. We wanted to make Ireland a leading location for innovation and entrepreneurship in the same way as we've made Ireland a leading location for foreign direct investment. So I'm delighted with the response to today's event and also to our previous event with the Taoiseach earlier this year. In 2 brief years, and despite a pandemic, Scale Ireland has built an 800-strong Slack community of startup CEOs and founders. We formed an important partnership with other sectoral organizations in the Alliance for an Innovation-Driven Recovery, conducted research and made submissions on key issues affecting startups, and collaborated with TUD and Trinity College to encourage the next generation of entrepreneurs. We're also playing a leading role at EU level to promote the sector. And earlier this year, we successfully launched a membership model. And I want to take this opportunity to thank the sector for the terrific support of the membership model, and also to encourage other founders to join us and ensure that their voices are heard, because this sector has an incredibly positive story to tell and an important contribution to make in the coming years to our economy and to our society. Startups don't just contribute jobs to our economy, they also tackle societal problems that larger companies are unlikely to invest in. Think of Food Cloud tackling food waste, Thriftify supporting sustainable consumption by helping charity shops sell online, or Akara Robotics with its healthcare robots. And as we've said before, startups are also bringing prosperity to every corner of the country, because founders deeply committed to their local communities come from every corner of the country. And these are not small companies targeting local markets. They are leaders targeting global market opportunities. Think of the AMCS building the world leader in waste management technology from Limerick, and probably a unicorn in waiting. Payslip, automating global payroll management from Castlebar and planning to add 150 jobs. Or Herdwatch, digitizing farming from Roscrea. But there are challenges that need to be addressed to maximize the potential of the sector. We need to incentivize private investment into high potential but high risk startups. The latest figures from the IVCA showing record levels of overall investment, but a 47% fall in the value of deals in the 1 to 5 million range in the second quarter, and a 42% decline in the actual number of those transactions is a serious wake-up call. We strongly welcome the Minister's decision to hold a public consultation on the EIIS investment scheme to address these issues. And while the sector has such huge potential in terms of regional employment, many startups are finding it increasingly difficult to recruit and retain key growth-driving talent. We need to address this by reforming the share option scheme for startups to ensure we keep those high-quality jobs here in Ireland. A share option in an early stage, high-risk Irish technology company is a very different thing to a share option in a major multinational, and the system should recognize that. There are other key issues such as enhancing and simplifying the R&D tax credit scheme to benefit more Indigenous companies. But today is about highlighting the economic and societal opportunities of this dynamic sector, which we believe will be a major driver of economic growth in the years ahead. I'd like to thank Minister for Finance Paschal Donohoe for joining us this afternoon. I'm very conscious that he had a busy weekend and that he has had to bend his schedule a little out of shape in order to join us, and I want to thank him for that. I'm also, dare I say it, encouraged that he has bent his schedule out of shape in order to join us. And with that, I invite him to give us his keynote address. Thank you, Minister. I think the Minister is delayed slightly, so hopefully he'll join us very shortly. Apart from political events, there are a number of pressing matters at the Fine Gael think-in which require his attendance. So
there we go, Brian. Good morning to you, Brian.
Thank you, Minister.
Great, thank you. It would have been an awful irony in an important session about high-tech startups to be let down by technology at this point. So I'm delighted to have the opportunity to participate in this session here with you today. And it's brilliant to be on a panel with so many leading entrepreneurs and experts regarding the high-tech startup sector in Ireland. I want to make 5 points to you in the moments that are available to me regarding my sense of where we stand within our economy at the moment, and particularly with regard to your own sector and the advocacy that you are doing on its behalf. Before I go into those points, though, I really do want to acknowledge the sterling work that has been done by Scale Ireland, and in particular by you, Brian, and also by Martina. I really believe you have step changed the profile that your entrepreneurs have, and step changed in awareness of the policy issues that are being raised, which I know in the medium term will yield benefits that will be important not only to the high-tech startup community in Ireland, but more broadly than that then to the Irish economy. So if I open up with my first point, which is regarding where our economy does stand at the moment, our current status and our prospects for the period ahead. If I look at where we stand now versus where we were on those really dark days around St. Patrick's Day of March of last year, there really has been an enormous progress with regards to both our economic and our public health. The forecasts that we have now regarding our economic health indicate that we would get back to pre-pandemic levels of employment and broader economic performance across 2023. And if I look, Brian and Martina, about where we stand at the moment and trends that began to develop across the summer with regards to employment and developments within our public finances, not only am I confident that we will deliver those targets in 2023, I'm increasingly hopeful that as we move into the rest of this year and indeed into 2022, for many really important economic indicators that matter so much to our society, I'm increasingly confident that we're going to make even quicker progress towards delivering those targets. I have that confidence for a number of reasons. Firstly, we have a vaccination program within Ireland that has worked so well in keeping our society as safe as we can, and in which incidentally technology has played a really critical role in the rollout of. Secondly, across the last 15 to 16 months, we have had economic supports, which, while they're never perfect, they never meet the need of every important employer or entrepreneur or company within our country, have nonetheless been successful in shielding many parts of our domestic economy from the very worst economic effects of this public health pandemic. All of those things coming together are leading to an increasing improvement in sentiment regarding our future from an investor point of view and from an employer point of view. And while I'm really, really conscious of the broader challenges that we have, the uncertainty that we still face with the pandemic, changes that may have happened due to inflation, the pressure and needs that many of your members face. Nonetheless, I'd respectfully make the case to you all this morning that our economic prospects, our economic performance at the moment are in a very different and a far more positive place than we would have hoped to be possible just over a year ago. That leads on to my second point regarding the community of entrepreneurs that are represented by Scale Ireland and represented to me in the advocacy efforts of Martina and Brian. I see this and see you as a really important pillar of our current economic performance, not to mention of our economic performance that is to come. That is, I hope, seen in the many different supports that we have in place to support you in your development. I know the supports are ones that you may have perspectives and even criticisms of. I know there are supports that you would like to see change or be augmented in the future. But nonetheless, the very scale that Martina mentioned a moment ago, the size of the tech startup and tech entrepreneur community already, the recognition that this scale gets outside of Ireland is an indication of the progress that we have collectively made. But I'm as ambitious and as hungry as you are to see that ambition grow and achieve more in the future. I would say to you, though, that I think it's really important that we look for that vision for the future. Not, however, in terms of acknowledging changes that might happen in the FDI environment for the global, the European and Irish economy in the years to come. Regardless of what may happen with foreign direct investment, and I remain really optimistic about how that could yet grow in the future, regardless of all of those changes, supporting our Indigenous tech community, supporting entrepreneurs that are Irish, are entrepreneurs from outside of Ireland that come to Ireland to make Ireland their business home. That of itself is intrinsically a good thing to do for our economy and for our society. So regardless of the opportunities that we may have, regardless even of the challenges that we may have regarding how FDI could change across the world and what it might mean for Ireland, while I look into those challenges with optimism and with positivity and with a confidence that we can work our way through them, independently of all of that, supporting the development of this sector and allowing Irish entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs who are located here in Ireland to fulfill their ambition, to make progress on the aims that they have, is of itself an important thing to do, is of itself something that we've made progress on in recent years. But I am as hungry and as ambitious, as I said, as all of you are, to look at how we can do more. That leads on to my next 3 points regarding the kind of things I'm thinking about at the moment regarding how we could realize that potential. The first one is the importance of clusters, the importance of how we can generate clusters of excellence and an environment in which entrepreneurs can learn from each other. I think, to be honest, Martina, my awareness of this has been heightened by the solitary sense that certainly I felt at times by having to do so much of my work over Zoom, over WebEx, by appreciating that the physical contact that occurred in meetings, in the way into meetings, in the workplace, over coffee, appreciating that that forms part of the fiber of how we generate ideas, innovation, how we support productivity, and also importantly, how we look after the well-being of ourselves and those who work in any workplace. But that concept of how we can generate more of these clusters of excellence in our country in the years to come is certainly something that I have a heightened appreciation of as we emerged from the most intense phase of the pandemic. And of course, I'm really proud of the fact that one of the communities and locations that do that the most is, of course, where you're broadcasting from in Dogpatch, located on the perimeter of my constituency, where that for many years did bring together different kinds of business ideas, different kinds of entrepreneurs. And I hope added to the fizz, the excitement involved in not only generating an idea, but then creating a business. And one of the things I want to think about in conjunction with my colleagues in government is how we can generate more of these clusters across the country, and in particular, if possible, outside of our larger cities. The second thing I'm, of course, will be reflecting on in the roll up to our budget is the role of our state agencies. The state agencies, whether they be Enterprise Ireland, whether it be the National Treasury Management Agency, and all its organisations through ISAF and the Strategic Banking Corporation of Ireland. All of these are the Government of Ireland. All of these are agencies of our state. And they have played an important role, of course, led by the work that Enterprise Ireland have done in supporting the development of high-tech entrepreneurship in Ireland. And of course, I'll be eager to look at how we can maintain and strengthen that role across the coming period. And of course, in the run up to the budget, when we look at budgetary allocations, when we look at the needs of those agencies, this is something that becomes particularly apparent when we have to make choices at that point. But it's not just about money. It's not just about resources. It's also about working with those really important state agencies so they can play an even more effective role in the future. And I think they're good at the moment, if not really good, to look at how they can support the development of your community, to grow employment, to grow investment, and to grow income. And then thirdly, of course, is the whole area of taxation and the role of our personal tax code and our business taxation code. Whether this be the debates that are underway now globally regarding corporate taxation, whether it be the kind of changes that I believe we will need to make in order for our personal taxation code to continue to reward and to continue to protect the benefits of entrepreneurship, or whether it be the different views and issues that I've heard you raise, in particular across the last year, in relation to our EIIS scheme and the role that it could play and does play in supporting entrepreneurship in Ireland. These, again, are the kind of things that I'll be reflecting on in the coming weeks. And indeed, some of the different issues and matters and proposals that you've raised was a really important catalyst in the public seminar that the Department of Finance organised to hear the views of stakeholders in relation to the EIIS scheme. So Martina, I'll leave it at that. I do want to go back to where I began with a recognition from me, from the government, of the really important value of the work that all of you are doing at the moment, work which has an intrinsic future benefit to the Irish economy. While I'm sorry that I couldn't be there with you in person, some changes in my agenda here meant that wasn't possible, but I did want to participate, albeit virtually, with you all, to hear the views of panelists and to share my own views regarding what we are doing at the moment and the kind of issues we're now reflecting upon that will guide us about what we're going to do in the future. So thanks to all in Scale Ireland for the work that you're doing. And in conclusion, thanks in particular to all those who work in such an important part of our business community in our country. Thank you for the contribution that you have made to date to our country, and thank you in advance for the contribution you'll make in the future. And please rest assured that even though the constraints on me are many, the pressures on me from an economic point of view are real. And when you come to budget time, you are aware of those budgetary constraints. Nonetheless, I am equally aware of the value of what you do and of the value of the contribution that will grow in the future to our economy, to our society, and to our country. So again, Martina, thanks for the opportunity to participate. And I really look forward to hearing the views of all your panelists regarding where we are at the moment and where we might go in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister, for those strong words of support for the sector and for startups around the country. And I think it's fitting that we start now and hear some of the contributions that those startups are making, and also hear from two leading investors on the investor landscape, because that's so important to this sector. So I'd like to welcome Eileen O'Mara, who is Stripe's EMEA go-to-market lead, John Purdy, the founder and non-executive chairman of Ergo, who is joining us remotely, Sohini, the founder and CEO of Empeal, and also our two leading investors here with us this morning, Elaine Coughlan, the co-founder and managing partner of Atlantic Bridge, and Merriman, a founder and executive chairman of Elkstone. So we have a full house here in Dogpatch. Can I start with you, Eileen? The success of Stripe, it's phenomenal. It's a global success story. Can I ask you about Stripe's short to medium term plans? And also, obviously, there's much speculation about a public listing.
Great. Well, first of all, thanks, Martina, for having us. We and me representing Stripe are just thrilled to be part of the session today, and just huge advocators, obviously, what's happening with Irish startups, and Stripe in particular wanting to play a very intentional part in this ecosystem. For those of you not familiar to Stripe, this is a company that's actually in its 11th year, and we still consider ourselves as a scrappy startup. And I think that's probably goes part of the success of Stripe, that the company was founded obviously by Patrick and John Collison, two Irish brothers. And very much at the heart of that organization and the vision is really to enable companies to grow and scale globally. So we have like a very simple tagline that is, we want to increase the GDP of the internet, but really what that means, and probably more enforced through COVID than any time before, to support businesses to scale globally, irrespective of where they are, what size they are, or who they're trying to sell a good or service to. So we are excited to now have Dublin as our joint HQ with San Francisco, very material. So Dublin is our HQ home. We're continuing to invest at scale here in Ireland. We recently announced 1,000 jobs, and that's really top of mind, to be quite honest. Some of the comments that you made earlier in terms of attracting talent, retaining talent, for people here in Dublin to have global careers at a global scale, that's really possible. We're very ambitious. We're ambitious of what we're hearing in our ecosystem. So at the moment, we are supporting about 30,000 Irish companies on our platform, and we're working very closely with both startups and SMBs across the country. Like some of the stats, when you think of scale up, like Stripe is operating as a startup, but really is scaling at large. In the last year, we onboarded 500,000 companies just across Europe. It's huge. Huge. And you think about all the complexity that happens with that. And yet we continue to stay focused on one thing, which is the users. And that really is the drive to your question. What are we focused on? We're focused on the users, and that's the long-term plan.
The numbers are phenomenal. Can I just ask you, it is important that critically you are employing engineering staff here in their Dublin operations.
Absolutely. I think one of the unique things we think about in Ireland is the access to talent. So engineering and product development is done here in Dublin. We just launched Stripe Tax about 6 weeks ago, completely developed here in Dublin. And that was really driven by users saying one of their main pain points when they try and scale outside of like a country or region is how do they remit and file taxes? So that was built in Dublin. It's a global product, and that's just, you know, one of many products that we're building here locally.
Thank you, Eileen. And I'm going to John Purdy, who is joining us not from outer space that you might think from his backdrop, but I think from the west of the country. John, you started your company 28 years ago with your co-founder, Tom Sheehy, in a spare room, which you were bumped out of when you first arrived, and also his shed, which had a galvanized roof. You now have a 100 million company, and something tells me you're not stopping there. Can you tell us about the success of Ergo, which normally be the exemplar, only you're number 2 to Stripe on a panel today.
And it's great to be number 2 to Stripe, I can tell you. And thanks for the invitation, Martin and Brian. And I'm very encouraged by the words that the Minister has shared with us this afternoon. We started 28 years ago to build a big business. We behaved as a big business from day one, even though we certainly weren't anything like or had the resources of a big business. But we focused very clearly on the large Indigenous customers in Ireland and also the FDI customers that were coming into Ireland. I think this is an important point, and this is where the ecosystem works really, really well together. We're a cloud and IT service management company. We service customers right across the globe on a 24/7 basis. We have 470 something people, and we're pushing forward all the time. We never stand still. We work on the basis that we've got to stay relevant to our clients, and therefore we've got to be ahead of the curve in terms of what we deliver. We fortunately have spun out during that journey of 28 years 2 product companies. So where we were looking for innovation within our own ranks, we found Ergo, and we started on the Ergo journey, which you very kindly mentioned earlier, and which we're very proud of. We also have a company which is at a much more embryonic stage called Flowforma, which is in the low-code, no-code business process, which employs 30 people in East Point. So we have a lot of ambition. After 28 years, last year I decided that it was time for a new lens, and I stepped out of the role a number of weeks ago and appointed a new CEO. So Paul McCann, the ex-managing partner from Grant Thornton, has taken up the reins, and his job is to double our business in 5 years. And that's the kind of ambition that we have for our company and for our people. And I think there's an awful lot more that we can do. If I may comment, I think we're very fortunate that we have a government that is very supportive of the startup scene. We're very fortunate that we have Enterprise Ireland, and we've had 2 fantastic CEOs in my time as an entrepreneur, and I'm sure Leo will do a great job carrying on that tradition. And it's a real differentiator when you talk to other entrepreneurs in other parts of the world and you tell them what happens in conjunction with Enterprise Ireland. They're quite amazed. And I point to what has happened with leadership and growth over the last 30 years. I was a participant in that. I still use the toolkit, and it just builds belief into entrepreneurs that we can be global leaders.
Great, John. And I'm going to turn to Sohini, who has a hard act to follow. You're following Stripe and John from Ergo. You're an early stage startup, and you're currently fundraising for 1.5 million, and you want to get to where they are if you can. Okay, so can you tell us about Empeal and where you're at?
Yeah, thanks, Martina, for the invite, and thanks to Scale Ireland for being such a strong advocate for us in the whole ecosystem. Yes, it is very hard act to follow, but we are very, very ambitious. As you know, we are a digital health company with the proprietary prescriptive AI recommender engine for which delivers data-driven, clinician-led nutrition, behavior change, and lifestyle solutions for prevention and management of chronic conditions. We raise 600,000 euros, but now, as you said, we're doing a 1.5 million round, and 30% of it is subscribed already, which is good. We're a team of 5 here, but going to 9 in October, and we'll be filling 2 very senior roles by December. We have international operations with an Indian team as well, who some of them are actually moving to Ireland within the next 12 months, if everything goes well. I just want to say this as well, because we are very proud that we have achieved 50-50 gender balance in our team. A small team, but we've done that, and everybody's has a very strong ethos for
community work. So we are involved in a lot of social community projects as well.
Well, the best of luck to you. And can I ask each of our panelists, before we head to our investors and before we bring the minister in, can I ask what you would all identify as the key challenges either in the sector or that your company is facing? Eileen, obviously the Coughlan brothers are involved in many of those European initiatives. What would you identify as the main challenges?
I mean, we touched on some of them earlier in terms of like talent, access to talent, the remuneration, the compensation is definitely a topic of conversation, not just us, obviously, but with the community that we work and we speak to. In terms of what we're hearing, and we survey our users in Ireland and across Europe all the time, access to new markets and the complexity of regulation to grow your business internationally is definitely one that is consistently coming through. Now, we are leaning into that and trying to advocate, obviously, and invest in that area and extract as much complexity for companies and merchants to expand globally. But the regulatory landscape and policy landscape is a real barrier for startups. They don't have the resources or investment really to lean into that. And that kind of is critical when you want to scale globally. The third, of course, capital. Access to capital is definitely top of mind. John and Patrick are often asked, well, you know, if you could, would you be able to start Stripe today, or would you be able to start that in Ireland? And in general, you would say, yes, you should. If the time was here now, could they start the company and grow it at this scale? However, we're not really hearing that from the ecosystem. Startups and founders are still finding it difficult to raise the capital and investment. They really need to scale and scale globally. I think one of the things we are seeing is that there's no lack of ambition. Like there's no lack of ambition and innovation, but I think the challenge with having the skills and the resources here locally with the global plan is one of the biggest things. That's probably a barrier at the moment to the companies that we're dealing with and that we're working with.
And can I ask you, John, in terms of briefly what you would outline as the main challenge facing your company or the sector? And I can almost guess what your answer is going to be.
Yeah, I think clearly talent, access to talent, and we're all fighting for the same talent pools, and we've got to figure out how do we expand that talent pool. You know, as we all fight for the same talent, the cost of talent rises. The cost of talent rises because the availability of housing is particularly rental properties, is becoming unaffordable for employees. I think that leads to a scenario where we need to see, and the minister alluded to this, more regional development. You know, the pandemic has shown we can run a business from anywhere. So I'm currently on holidays in the west of Ireland. I'm talking to you via fantastic broadband. Why can't we have employees out on the west coast of Ireland or the southwest coast of Ireland or whatever it happens to be? So I think as employers we have to open our mind to new ways of working. One of the things that I would impress on the minister is the importance of entrepreneurship in education. I believe that entrepreneurship can be a syllabus subject at second level and third level. And to be fair, that has improved somewhat, but it needs to improve an awful lot. For years, I've participated as the County Meath sponsor in the Junior Entrepreneur Programme, and I'm phenomenally encouraged on those days that I spend in schools. And I think if we can introduce entrepreneurship into young people, the benefits will be absolutely enormous. I think it's a real opportunity. I think to move the ecosystem to a new level, there's a real opportunity for government and for entrepreneurs to participate in that.
And John, thank you for that. And also we're moving on to Sohini. I mean, you're in a fundraising round, so I suspect the main challenge is in that area.
Yeah, no, in fairness, I have to say we did pre-seed, and pre-seed is probably Ireland is probably the best place to be a pre-seed company, to be honest. But post that, I think we need to really rethink, because three problems startups face is talent, revenue, and investments. And within investments, what we are facing is there is no structured way of approaching a larger pool of Irish investors. That's needed because we are seriously losing out to international competition because we are not getting capitalized on time.
And if I'm mistaken, also you didn't apply for the Employment Investment Incentive Scheme. You would have been a prime case of someone that should be,
yes,
but didn't. And why did you not apply for it?
Yes, so coming to the EIIS, the self-certification is a real issue. It's very onerous, it's punitive. We didn't want to take that risk. And if you go for a third-party certification, it's really very costly, but also if you read the fine print, it's actually still onerous on us. And this other thing is the undertaking under difficulty, that clause is only valid for 3-year-old companies. And with that, if we are supporting tech, AI, deep tech companies, I really doubt whether they will be able to satisfy or comply with that within the 3 years' time. Okay. We didn't, and I really urge the Minister and everybody to have a look at it.
Well, Minister, hardly surprising, capital, staff, and obviously attracting investment are some of the key, and regulation, some of the key issues raised there. What's your views on the contributions from our 3 entrepreneurs?
Thank you, Martina. I'm also really encouraged by the recognition that they give of the current assets and positive qualities that Ireland does have in those areas. We do have supports that are in place and recognitions that are in place that clearly do play a role in supporting our entrepreneurs to get their businesses to this point. But all that being said, I have listened carefully to what your colleagues have said. While I am familiar with the points that they've made, it's always good to hear them directly again in the way that have just been made. I've heard the different views in relation to the EIIS scheme and some of the views that are there regarding its operation. On the other side of the coin, these are precious resources that are being used in taxpayers' funds. So I hope you'll understand that we do have things that we need to deliver and requirements that we have to meet regarding the operation of the scheme. But I do hear the views of your panel in relation to it. I've heard the views that they have in relation to the competition for talent here in Ireland. I know on one hand, that is a consequence of success, but I know on the other hand, it can be the greatest constraint for many businesses in growing further. And of course, in decisions that we make in relation to working visas, decisions that we make in relation to personal taxation in the future, these are things that may be ingredients in helping deal with this. Just one final additional point from me, which maybe hasn't been picked up so far, and maybe I should have said at the start. I'm also very encouraged by the kind of collaboration that I see happening between universities and our institutes of higher education and the community that we're discussing here today. If I just take some very local examples to me, if I see the work that Technology University Dublin are doing, if I see the work that DCU are doing, and if I see the kind of work that Trinity are doing, and they want to do more of it in the future, it does point to me that the fusion that we have between research, between higher education, and between entrepreneurship is something that I do think we do quite well at the moment, but we need to do it even better in the future than we're doing now. But I am encouraged by the recognition that I see of that by many of our universities at the moment.
And Minister, I'm going to hand over to Brian because he's going to get the perspective of some investors now.
I'm very conscious that the Minister is on a short leash, so to speak. So I have one very quick question for each of you, and then interested to hear the Minister's reflections. So, Elaine, perhaps you could start by telling us a little bit about the current landscape from the perspective of funding for companies in Ireland.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Minister, thanks for your support. On that question, I think back to last March and what the Minister said, I remember it well, and we obviously participated in a lot of calls, Minister, at that time. They're very dark days, and I'd just like to acknowledge and thank the Minister and his team and what the government have done for Irish industry, particularly our own sector over the last year in terms of the supports. I didn't think we'd end up where we are today, where the most recent news is that almost $1 billion has gone into the sector in the first half of this year. And the minister, be aware, like all headlines, they're not all true. You have to dig in. $1 billion has gone in, but there's a lot of trends there, Brian. We run one of the largest early stage funds, Atlantic Bridge University Fund, which is doing a lot of the work the minister's talking about there in terms of collaboration, and definitely going to have a talk, and Sohini should have a talk with myself and Alan after the panel to talk about your spin out from Trinity. But what I'd say is, unfortunately, as you said, that part of the market, which is the future, 50% down. The other trend I would say for the minister, with my Enterprise Ireland hat on, and John referenced this, we obviously want companies like Ergo and Finergo and Stripe that scale up and become global and multi-billion-dollar companies. If you look at the M&A trends, M&A is up about 33%. The amount of companies that are being acquired, Irish companies, is really significant. That's great in some cases, but not in all. Could you imagine if John's company or Eileen's company had not become the almost 100 billion collectively that they're worth today? So that is a factor, and in a lot of cases, entrepreneurs face being acquired because of that access to that larger round of capital not being available to them. So it is really a capital and skills question. And of course, the capital helps you get the skills, and of course, attractive stock options help you attract staff as well. And so it becomes a circular motion. And then the last thing I'd say is on that scale up. There's been about 75 IPOs. I was with the London Stock Exchange last week. This year to date in London, there's been about 89 in the Euronext, and unfortunately, we haven't one Irish company in those which we should have based on the statistics we have. So we definitely have a scale up and a scale out issue. And then I would just say the other big trend that we're seeing in the market is countries like Germany, France, Italy, the UK, governments heavily investing directly into these technology sectors of the future. So I would just say to the minister, I think we're on the right track, but I'd encourage us to do more and to go faster.
Thanks very much, Elaine. Alan, how about the role of angel capital in the market? What's the current state, and could it play a bigger role? And maybe you could also talk a little bit about the barriers to increase DIIS investment.
Yeah, absolutely, Brian. I think maybe just to give a little context of Elkstone. Elkstone's a multifamily office, and what we're endeavouring to do is be a window in and out of Ireland. Family office is very important in the global ecosystem. And in terms of being a window in and out of Ireland, what we mean is we're endeavouring to attract capital into Ireland to support real estate, to support Irish ventures, et cetera, et cetera. And we're also trying to be a window out of Ireland in terms of supporting Irish venture, Irish startups scale and network internationally. And the more and more that can happen, the better collectively we're going to be. And just as the minister himself has acknowledged and drawn out, I mean, we're getting a lot of things right. There's a lot of good things happening in this country, but as ever, if we want to be the best, there's more to do. There's always going to be more to do. And EIS as a policy has been a really smart policy. There are really some very notable successes over the years, and they've been both individual successes and regional successes, but so much more can be done with EIS. And Brian, as you've just mentioned, the angel community, the ecosystem, it's just so important. At a macro level, I think we need to get two things right. We need to get FDI absolutely right. We've done incredibly well in that space. We also have to get the early stage ecosystem right. And there's an ask there. There's a big ask in terms of getting that right. And those two can dovetail very, very well together. So I think the critical thing is that at the angel ecosystem, we just don't have enough private capital at work. There's a lot more that can be done, and EIS has a big role to play there. It's not just about the policy, it's about how effective that policy is on the ground. It's about, to use kind of parlance from the early stage ecosystem, it's about product market fit, and it's about user experience. And the truth is the user experience, both for the companies, as we've heard earlier, and from the investors, is not where it needs to be. If we get that right, it will compound and compound. There's going to be huge change coming in the world, and there's going to be huge change here. We can be the optimists in that. Ireland should be part of that change agenda, not a faller in it, whether it's robotics, whether it's autonomous driving, whether it's DNA sequencing, whether it's climate change, and there's so much change happening. We need to be at the forefront of that. EIS can be critical in terms of changing the culture within the public. We need diversity. We need more of the public participating and supporting our startups. This is something in the US, it's cool to support startups. It's cool to put your hard-earned money to work in startups. It's cool to back people. It's cool to take risk because there's a common good. The state plays a critical role in fostering that, in enabling it. EIS is very smart, but we have to get it work a lot better. And I'm delighted the Minister, the Department of Finance are having a very hard look at this. They're listening to all the constituents. We know there's a very fine balance to get right, but this is, the Minister recognises, if we're ambitious, if we're hungry, if we want to make change, if we want to have real impact, getting this public policy right and getting it to work. Ideas, as we know as investors, ideas are easy. Execution is very hard. If we, as a country, get the execution of the angel ecosystem right, if we get EIS right as a catalyst for change, we will have a lot more stripes, et cetera, to celebrate, and we'll all be winners. Thank you, Minister. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks, Alan. Yes, I think it's absolutely true that a vibrant angel sector is the driver of most successful ecosystems. Minister, perhaps I can come to you for a final comment, and apologies that we may have delayed you slightly longer than you might have hoped.
No problem at all, Brian. I'm pleased to be able to tell you it's not a short leash that I'm under. It's just a shortage of time. But that time has been really well used to hear the views of your panelists in relation to the different issues that they've raised. I think Alan and Elaine have both given a fair summary of where we are, in that there is much, as many of you have acknowledged, that we are doing pretty well. But if we want to do even better in the future, we always need to assess what we are doing and see if there are opportunities to change. This is why I'm here today, to hear the views of the panel. It's why the department organised a public consultation specifically on the topic of the EIS scheme. And look, that deliberation, the discussion we're having here today, will all be on my mind as we make decisions with regards to the finance bill. As you well know, Martina, I can't give any indications about what will be in the finance bill, but I do want to acknowledge that this has been a helpful debate, and we've had a good public consultation on this topic, and it will certainly be of help to me in the coming period.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you very much, Minister, and thank you for taking time out of a busy day to join us. I particularly welcome your comments in relation to the consideration that you're giving to the issues that we've raised. And I just wanted to also mention that we completely agree that this is not an either or scenario in relation to FDI and the growth and the development of the Indigenous sector. The two can operate effectively together and hopefully will continue to grow and prosper into the future. So thank you very much for your time. I'd also like to move on to a few other thank yous now. Firstly, thank you to all of our panelists for joining us today. Eileen O'Mara from Stripe, John Purdy from Ergo, Sohini Day from Empeal, Elaine Coughlan, Atlantic Bridge, and Alan Merriman, Elkstone. So thank you all for your time. Also, thank you to our hosts, Dogpatch Labs, Patrick, and all the team here who've done a fantastic job. And we really thank Dogpatch Labs for its continuing support for Scale Ireland. Special thanks to our partners in the sector, in the innovation, or the Alliance for an Innovation-Driven Recovery, Allied for Startups, the European Startup Network, our steering group, and the Irish Tech Hub Network. And finally, but most importantly, I'd like to thank the Scale Ireland team, Sheila, Luke, Niamh, Noel, and of course Martina for all the work that they've put in behind the scenes and on the stage to make this event happen. And finally, a very special thanks to Sinead Merriman and her colleague May, who worked behind the scenes to make sure that everything went smoothly, and to the minister's colleagues, Lisa Burns and Justin in the Department of Finance. Thank you all. And finally, really finally, thank you to all of you for joining us for this event. We hope that you got something from it and look forward to having you join us again for another Scale Ireland event in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.